Angie Bowie is here, WMMR. Hello.
Hello.
As we wait for our corned beef sandwiches to arrive.
Lunch.
Yes. This is actually Friday, but it'll sound like Sunday to the folks. But you have returned to Philadelphia, the scene of many triumphant performances by David Bowie and the Spiders and the Diamond Dogs and David himself and the Garson Band and all of those amazing moments of kids lined up outside in the middle of the night. And this is a special city for you.
Definitely. I think it has to be special for David to come and record here because he has to feel really at home before he'd ever go anywhere to record, really.
Yeah. I was at a couple of sessions the last time on the last album. And in fact, I saw him. I feel very privileged that I saw him do the vocal on Win.
Oh, fabulous! Yeah, right.
And it was incredible.
It's
I
great,
really,
isn't it?
Yeah, it is great. I really, I had never seen him record, especially vocals, and it was amazing.
Yeah, one of the most tragic and terrifying things I've ever seen was to watch him do the vocals on Signet Committee, the first album that I was with him when he did, and I don't know if you know that particular track, Ed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it was heartrending because it really summed up really what he'd been doing for 6 months at the Arts Lab in Beckenham. And he finished singing it. Miss Conti said, "That was amazing. Come up." David said, "No. I'm going to the bathroom." And he didn't come out for about 10 minutes. When he came out, he was composed. He said, "All right, run it." He said, "I'll listen to it now." But it was, if anyone is familiar with that particular track, I'm sure they can appreciate it. It's very heavy.
Do a few lines and then go back and do some more until it was just right. I mean, it took hours, and it went on till like noon the next day. We'd been there from the night before, and afterward he said, "Boy," he says, I haven't sung a vocal like that or done it that way since The Man Who Sold the World those days."
Yeah, that album is very much like that.
Very tortured.
Very hard, yeah.
But just to get every phrase right.
True, is a perfectionist. I think about, the sound and how he wants it to feel.
I
think it's great.
You like it? You like it?
Yeah, I'm very fond of it. I think it also explains a lot of questions and subjects that we find that people are always interested in knowing about, The words of fame are very heavy, They really lay it on the line about what it's like, to be out and doing good and how it feels, And
I like the way you slipped into your English accent.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it was appropriate. Yes.
I was quoting an English
playwright. Certainly, that's right. You're an American originally. I say that because you.
Yeah, I've never lived here.
Might as well be a Britisher by now.
Yeah, I guess. I've spent more time in England than I've had the opportunity of spending in the States. But I think that'll change now.
Mm-hmm. Where are you from originally?
Well, I was raised in Cyprus. And I have American parents, so...
Cyprus?
Yeah, that's where I'm American. I've never spent any time.
That's down around Greece and Turkey, isn't it? Yes. I've heard of it. Haven't been there, actually. But I know there's some very important wars going on.
Well, yeah, we keep on.
So how long did you live in Cyprus?
All my life. Really until the war last year. I used to go back.
Really?
Every year.
When did you first come to America?
I came to America every 3 years with my parents on vacation. My father's a mining engineer, and his contract was for 3 years each time, and then we'd come here. And but the only time I started to spend time here is when I went to Connecticut College for Women. It was quite a disaster, but amusing.
And I'm sure you've never been asked, how did you meet David, and how did that, and when was that, and how did that all happen?
It was in 1969, and I met him after I was going out with the president of a record company in England called Mercury Records, and we went to see him at a roundhouse where he was playing with a mixed media band that he'd formed called Feathers with Hutch, who then toured with us for a while, and a lovely girl called Hermione. And it was an amazing act, and this particular president was supposed to decide whether he was going to sign them, and his assistant was a very industrious man called Calvin Mark Lee, had brought the act to his attention. And this particular man was not interested. And Calvin and I started pushing for him because we really thought the band was terrific. And eventually Calvin said, "Oh, you should meet David." So I met him. We were friends from the start. We had the same sense of humor.
And how long after that were you married, as they say?
We were married about, let me think, about 10 months after that. And I kept having to leave the country because I had visa problems, We were really getting fed up with it. I don't think we could afford it. Keep buying me air tickets to go out and come back in again. So we got married.
I see. The first time that David was here was about, I think, 71.
Right.
When he came around, when he was in this that studio over there.
Right.
We had lunch at corned beef sandwiches at the very R&W across the street. And that was when he had short blonde hair. And we had already been very into his albums. I mean, especially Man of Words, Man of Music, the Space Oddity album. And he came here right after the Man Who Sold the World had come out.
Right.
And it was strange because, looking back now, I remember when he was here, he was very, normal is what I mean, but the word is ridiculous, but you know what I mean?
Right.
All right. He wasn't a spaceman. He wasn't bisexual, or apparently in any case. And then the next thing was the Hunky Dory album came out, and there he is with a dress on, and there was an article in Rolling Stone that said Bowie seen with dress on. And I thought, that's weird, because I remember when he was here, all he could talk about was how he wanted to get home to you and his son. Really, it was weird. And then suddenly I was and there wasn't even a hint. Of course, I guess times were different in any case, but 4 or 5 years ago. But there was none of the hype about any of that yet. No,
there was no hype of it. I mean, they did an article. Melody Maker's actually the people that are responsible for it, because Melody Maker were fabulous, and they wanted to do a big interview with David. And it just happened that the person who was interviewing him said, blah, 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 about wearing women's dresses. And David said, well, they're not women's dresses. They were designed by Michael Fish, and they were designed for men. And they're not dresses at all. They were robes, And then, I suppose, as the conversation progressed, this person got a little bolder and said, well, are you bisexual? And David said, yes, certainly. I'll watch anything that moves, basically. And they ran it on the front page, and it was picked up pretty much everywhere, But in fact, when he said it, he'd already planned the Ziggy Stardust show, and the photographs that accompanied it were the original photographs from the Ziggy Stardust tour, beginning of the Ziggy Stardust tour. The thing with dresses had occurred much, much before, because Michael Fish had designed these things for him about 7 or 8 months before. So the two, although put together now, had a big time span in between,
There was a long time span between those albums, between Man Who Sold the World and Hunky Dory, and I guess between that and Ziggy, there was I remember getting Gem, was that one of the companies involved at the time? Gem sent us not the importers, but Gem, GEM over there, sent us an import copy of Hunky Dory the first time, because they knew we were interested in David way back then. And didn't have a cover on it, as I remember. So that was part of the confusion. We finally got the cover. But what was that? I mean, were they weird times back then? I mean, how was that? Was it different from now? All of those times when it really wasn't happening commercially for a while.
Well, you see, what happened was that we started to do some dates with the Hunky Dory album, which were lovely. We were playing intermediate places, because David had a folk club at the Three Tons in Beckenham, which was the Arts Lab. And so we were playing intermediate shows of half folk, half rock, And then David finalized the deal with RCA, and so they said, go to the studio and do an album. Well, of course, once he had that and knew that he was going to be able to tour and that there would be some support, and he had a record company who believed in him, then he went ahead and designed Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars concept for the album, and designed the stage show and started to get into it. And he had a band that he adored, and he had Tony Visconti.
Yeah.
And that was really, I think, when they started to cook, because the boys started to understand what they were going to be doing. Until that time, David was always a prolific songwriter. He'd always been sort of recognized as a songwriter in England. But once he actually had done the concept album, then everything fell into place as far as what he'd been saying and what he'd been doing, which was to tell the truth, And that, I think, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars was a very positive statement about truth, about rock and roll in general, which, as far as David was concerned, was something that he'd been into for so long, He was in a band performing from when he was 14. So you can appreciate, by the time you're 22, you know more or less what you want to say. That's 6 years.
The album Ziggy is relatively tame compared to what we heard in the live versions of those songs.
I think so.
It's very, and it's not hard at all, not harsh.
No.
And it became much more, much more exciting thing later. Although I love that record. I know
that's what you mean, because I always felt that. I felt the album's very beautiful. It's very lovely to listen to. But on the other hand, when I want to remember the shows, then I always listen really to David live, because all of the tracks taken from that album are so wonderful live.
And there's the old Santa Monica show, which we had on tape. Metro Media Stations had done the thing on tape, which was possibly going to be an album. David had told me at one time that would be the next album, but
I'm sure he wanted to. I don't really know what happened with that. A lot of that was so sort of confused with the different opinions and the machinations that were involved with the Freeze. So, we never really knew what was going to happen next.
What do you think of that whole sexual hype thing? Because it really became sort of a...
No, I don't think it did, Ed, because I think you must remember that it brought a lot of people out. Made a lot of people realize that, it's just all baloney anyway. People are people, He was asked a simple question and he gave an answer. Now, of course, it's going to happen that people are going to refer to that and want to know. But on the other hand, you don't say it, you don't mention it if you don't want to be asked about it. So there's no hype, because no one's ever, said that it was untrue or that it didn't happen.
I didn't mean that you were hyping. I meant that it became an issue, whereas perhaps it shouldn't have.
Right. Well, it does. But on the other hand, I think you find, they say that truth is stranger than fiction. If you tell the truth, you're bound to have that occur. And in the eyes of the media, it's something that's newsworthy. And as a result of that, it's bound to be, blown up beyond all proportion. And I think it took David touring here for the amount of time he did before people realized what an amazing showman he is, which is, a musician and writer, because until you see him live or until you hear an album, without thinking about all of the rest, which you can do once you have that intimate and personal touch with him, having seen him, and really listen to something, then it changes completely.
I guess I'm looking at it in retrospect, especially since that we had been into him before. There was when we had to solicit the records, when we had to find them, and then suddenly it became very, very strange. I mean, he has a sort of a legendary status in a sort of a social sense,
I think so, and I think that's something that, it's really not that important anymore, because he's, very confident of what he wants to do now, But at the time, I think for anybody to be that truthful and that upfront was going to put him in the mainstream of whatever was happening, because everyone else takes so much time bullshitting and not telling the truth, It's foolish.
Meanwhile, you were sort of the lady of mystery through all of this in the background. And you see a picture of you here and there, but basically, you haven't been overexposed.
I'm overexposed now.
Yes, I realize that, but yes, but this is radio.
This is radio, that's right.
So
I have on a very loose summer blouse. It's wonderful.
Yes, so you were in the background, really, weren't you?
Yes, totally.
And yet here you are. I understand you just came from taping the Mike Douglas show.
That's right.
So tell us all about it, because our listeners might miss that show.
Well, please don't miss it, because I think you'll have a laugh. It's a hoot. And there's wonderful film of David. Just fabulous film from the last concert at the Hamilton Odeon.
The one that was on television and bleeped, right?
Yes. Oh, it's divine. It's really lovely. And Mike Douglas was very charming. And I had a chance to sing, which I enjoyed. So.
Are you a singer now?
No. I'm an actress, but I just, I think Mike Douglas shows it's much easier to segment it with songs than to segment it with projecting a personality, So the personality projection I'm quite into anyway, but it was fun to get a chance to entertain, You can't really call yourself an entertainer and never have a chance to work, So this meant I had a chance to do it.
Yeah. You were going to do, I remember you were going to do the Wonder Woman thing and you didn't.
Right, no, well, it was a disaster. They wouldn't send me a script for a start. I didn't see the script until 20 minutes before I went on. And,
did I see you on the Carson show talking about that once?
Yeah.
I did, yes.
Yeah.
It was a while back.
Oh, yeah.
So, but you are working on something now. What are you doing now?
Well, I'm working on a couple of things. The thing that actually is most interesting that we're going to do is I just recently had the pleasure of lecturing at Eton College. And I was lecturing on aspects of entertainment. And the whole thing developed into a comedy. It was wonderful. So when David heard the tapes, he was really laughing, and he said, you should make an album of this. And I said, well, no, I don't think so. But what came of it was that we decided to do a tour. And so we're going to be touring New England, up to Philadelphia, around and down, back to New York. And I think that that's what we're going to be doing while they, while the people that negotiate money and worry about things like that worry about films, and also television series that we're hoping to do with Marvel Comics and Stan Lee, the Black Widow and Daredevil.
And you'll be doing the tour. What will it involve? I mean, what will you be doing?
Well, I'll be doing what amounts to, it may become a little more musical when we plan it, because we've had so much fun now doing some songs, adding songs into the show. But it's a lecture loosely called Aspects of Entertainment, but it's very funny.
What kind of places will you play? I mean,
I suppose
clubs, concert halls, or theaters?
I think it'll basically be colleges and universities. We want to do probably some clubs. I'm sure there are some that would be conducive to that sort of thing. I'd love to go back and do the Tower. I'm very fond of the Tower Theater here.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you are, David, because of the album. The album was great to be, it sounds great. I mean, what a great live record.
Well, I know what you mean.
It's just so good on record, it's amazing.
And the amazing thing about that record that I don't think people have really appreciated is that is the only live record that I know of that contains no overdubs to David's vocals or to any instrument in the band except for Jeff and Guy's mics when they lost
That's what Visconti says,
sound, for about, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds. I went into the studio and just redid the backing vocals on that.
It really is a remarkable live record.
I do. I think it's absolutely amazing. It couldn't have been done with more affection anywhere else in the country. Because to do it in Philadelphia, which is really, I think, one of the main homes where, David started to appeal and for people to really understand him and get into him.
Well, a lot of that is because he had a head start because of the Space Oddity and Man Who Sold the World.
I'm sure it's because of that, and I'm sure it's totally due to the fact that, people were ready to listen.
In fact, I was telling you, we were talking about the famous Springsteen-Bowie meeting.
Oh, right.
Which I sort of arranged. But actually, Tony Visconti heard me talking about Bruce and called me and said, can you get him down to the studio? So that's what happened. That's when he came down on the bus. I mean, did you ever hear that whole story? He came down on the bus.
Well, I heard that he came down on the bus, and I thought, well, he's very wise.
Well, he didn't. At the time, he didn't drive. He has since got himself. Bruce has since got himself a car, a '57 Chevy with flames on the side. But he, at the time, didn't have a car, and he took the bus. So I picked him up at the bus station, took him down to Sigma, and I thought it was fascinating because David was so pleased to meet Bruce,
Well, he's a great fan.
Yeah, and Bruce was sort of just in awe of the whole scene, because you had all these, people around, and Ava Cherry was there, and the singers and the band, and there was Jeffrey, what was his name? Oh, Warren Peace.
Warren Peace.
And who is a stone, who is a very big fan of Bruce's. He was thrilled.
Well, he and Jeffrey, saw him for the first time at Max's about, what did we decide? It was about 2 years ago, maybe
Must
a little more.
Must have been 2.5, yeah.
And they were very into him.
Yeah.
Just thought he was wonderful. And then we went back to England and toured. And they kept talking about it, and David would talk about it a lot in interviews. And then they went into the studio and recorded some tracks.
When will we hear those? I mean, do you know, are they scheduled?
I don't know, though, but I mean, David never really, to my knowledge, has recorded anything that doesn't come up in the end, you know, but he always wants to wait for what he thinks is the right moment, a propitious time.
Yeah, well, as we thought it, at the time he said that it might be on a Pinups Volume 2. Is he still thinking of that?
Well, I'm sure it will be. I'm sure that he'll do that at some stage, and that would be a perfect place for including...
Because he said, I want to do it of songs of American writers.
Right.
And
well, he's taking care of England.
Yes,
you know, on
with
Pinups. So I suppose now it'll be an opportunity for him to do an album which is like all the things that he's enjoyed and have influenced him.
Yeah.
He
has David, I guess, is one of those very rare performers who I think put Bruce in that category, and I think maybe Bette Midler up there. They can do anything. They can do so much, and I guess one of their biggest problems is deciding just what to do. You know, he can do so many things and probably many things well, and what to do. You can't do everything. You just can't do everything, I guess, and you have to decide what road to take.
Yeah, and it's also, I think it's very difficult when I saw Bruce Springsteen, the bottom line, just recently, I kept thinking, he's got to be in movies. He's got to be in movies, because he's got that wonderful face, just so touching. It's really poignant.
Yeah.
He doesn't sing a song. He has a wonderful voice. Don't get upset, everyone. I'm not talking about his voice, but he delivers the song, which is really what people should do. That's truly entertainment. And as soon as delivery comes into it, as opposed to just being able to sing, then you're an entertainer, and the media opens up to you. And then you really have to decide, And I think it's like, Jagger was the précurseur, I don't know how you say it, the forerunner, of going into films. And I think he wasn't probably as happy with the product as he should have been, because the film is definitely a legendary performance, and that might have just, made him slightly worried about doing something else, but you should realize he was wonderful in it. And, it's wonderful to see him on the silver screen. Bruce is one of those performers. Bette Midler, totally, I agree with you. David, definitely, as we'll get to see at the beginning of next year.
Will we? What is the film called?
The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Right.
And it's amazing.
Have you been down there at all?
Yes, I was in New Mexico and in Albuquerque and Lake Fenton, where our fans from Philadelphia were.
No.
Kids.
No.
I gotta tell you, it was an amazing moment seeing your smiles. It was amazing. Just fantastic. Yeah, fans who were also at Sigma Sound and who were at all the shows in town. It was fantastic just to see them. They came down and they stayed and were just as wonderful as they could be and helpful and had a great time, I think.
And the film has music in it, right?
The film, David, of course, will supervise all of the music. He's head of musical direction on this film and will write the tunes. Some of the songs will probably appear in the film without vocals, but on the album will appear with the vocals David's written.
What is the base? Without going into too much detail, what is the basis of the film? What is it about?
It's a very interesting psychological, social breakdown of the situation in America. It involves somebody who is an alien, not of this earth, but that definitely takes a backseat to the drama that unfolds. And Nick Rogue is a master of putting together something like that. I'm sure you remember Don't Look Back, and all of the wonderful things he's done. And this, from the rushes that I've seen, it's amazing. Quite an amazing film.
There are in other words, will there be vocals in the film at all?
I don't know. I think there probably will be in some places.
But not on screen.
It's a soundtrack, and it'll run as a soundtrack. But there'll be songs, because, David, not songs. So on the album, I think they're planning that he'll...
And musically, will it be different than the last album? Is he continuing in that direction, or...
Can you imagine him doing two things in a row that are the same?
I guess not.
I doubt it. I'm sure it won't really. You'd know it wasn't a David Bowie album if it sounded like the last one.
He'll have to invent something new.
Oh, well, I'm sure he's got it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Hunky Dory album is, many people still regard that as one of the greatest albums ever made,
It's a beautiful album.
Life on Mars and Changes.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. We had a sort of a thing here, a poll, where we tabulated a list of our listeners' favorite songs, and he was way up there with Changes, Life on Mars, that kind of stuff. And, but Fame was up there too, you see.
Yeah, well, right. Fame's a great song. It's, I mean, but David is the lyricist. I think he writes wonderful melodies, but he's basically a lyricist, and I think you have to be interested, in what he's saying. And then if you're interested in what he's saying, you get this amazing realization. He's brilliant because he can say it in that short space of time. It just cameo something. And he did. He cameoed that, what we were discussing previously. That whole feeling about what it's like.
Yeah. Which Bruce is about to find out, incidentally.
I guess, yeah. I mean, he definitely will, because it's breaking wide open for him. And I think
it's a heavy thing. It's very heavy, Fame. Yes. What'd you say it was? It was the great...
I didn't. Hector Williams said,
yes.
Fame is the worst atrocity.
The worst atrocity. Would you wish it on someone?
Well, you see, it depends, because it just depends if people truly think that it's a bad thing. I mean, the song Fame never analyzes it as though it's something, that you don't want or that you don't strive for if you're an entertainer. It just tries to break it down, so that people can understand the pressures that you cope with. And then if you cope well, that's all right. If you cope bad, it doesn't matter anyway, as long as you have the strength to stand up under it, and go ahead and continue. So I think with Bruce, he's so prepossessing and such a charming personality, might upset him. On the other hand, he's an entertainer, so you can't get all dramatic about it.
Right.
Oh, poor baby, how he's going to suffer now. Baloney. You just cope with it.
Baloney or worse, yes.
I mean, he knows what it's down to.
Well, the sirens are here to take you away, Angie. And more importantly, our sandwiches have arrived.
Ah, wonderful.
So I will bid you adieu. And,
adieu, Ed.
And thank you for coming up, and hope to see you next time. Bring David along if you like, and just come back to Philadelphia anytime.
You're wonderful. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's going to be me, David Bowie, from possibly the forthcoming album, possibly not, just something that didn't make it onto the Young Americans LP. 93.3 WMMR in Philadelphia. I'm Ed Sciaky. Hope you enjoyed our conversation with Angie Bowie. Hope you did, and if you did, let us know.